Millionaire CEO followed his employee to fire her but was paralyzed when he saw two little girls in the humble house. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The shrill alarm pierced the darkness of the small bedroom, echoing off the bare walls. Jessica Hayworth opened her eyes with effort, her body heavy with exhaustion before the day had even begun. Through the window, the first hints of dawn barely illuminated the tiny apartment she shared with her 6-year-old twin daughters. Another day, she whispered to herself, careful not to wake Zoe and Harper, who were curled up together under a thin blanket on the mattress beside her. The sight of them sleeping peacefully, unaware of the crisis looming over their heads, made her heart ache and strengthen simultaneously. Jessica shivered as she placed her bare feet on the cold floor. The heating had been inconsistent lately, another bill she couldn't afford to pay in full. She pulled on a worn sweater and made her way to the kitchen, her movements automatic after years of the same morning routine. Opening the nearly empty cupboard, she confirmed what she already knew. A half loaf of bread, some peanut butter, and a few servings of pasta remained. The refrigerator was equally barren. A small carton of milk, some apples, and leftover beans. She'd been stretching every dollar for weeks now, but there was no stretching what wasn't there. We'll figure something out, she promised herself as she started brewing the last of the coffee. The rich aroma filled the small space, momentarily masking the scent of mildew from the bathroom's persistent leak. As the coffee brewed, Jessica leaned against the counter and closed her eyes. 2 years had passed since Connor's sudden death. A car accident that had taken him instantly, leaving her alone with 2 4-year-old girls and a mountain of medical debts. No life insurance, no savings, just memories and his old guitar collecting dust in the corner. Mommy? Zoe's sleepy voice broke through her thoughts. The little girl stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, her blonde hair a tangled mess around her face. Good morning, sweetheart. Jessica smiled, pushing aside her worries. Did you sleep well? Zoe nodded and padded across the room to wrap her arms around Jessica's legs. I'm hungry. Breakfast is coming right up. Let's see if your sister's awake, okay? Harper appeared moments later, clutching her tattered stuffed rabbit. Unlike her more outgoing twin, Harper was quieter, more observant. Her eyes, Connor's eyes, seemed to see right through Jessica's brave facade. Can we have pancakes, Mommy? Harper asked hopefully. Jessica's heart sank. No eggs, no milk, no pancakes. Not today, sweetheart, but we have peanut butter toast. And maybe we can do pancakes this weekend. A promise she had no idea how to keep. The girls settled at the small table while Jessica prepared toast, cutting each piece into triangles the way they liked. As they ate, she sipped her coffee, mentally calculating how many more days they could survive on what they had. The rent was 3 months overdue. Her last job as a receptionist at a dental office had ended when the practice closed down. The temporary position she'd found since then barely covered food and utilities. The eviction notice could come any day now. Where would they go? Her parents had passed years ago, and Connor's father had disowned him long before the twins were born. Friends had helped where they could, but everyone had their own struggles, their own families to feed. A sharp knock on the door jolted Jessica from her thoughts. Stay here, girls, she said, setting down her mug with trembling hands. The man at the door wore a crisp suit that seemed out of place in their rundown apartment building. His expression was impassive as he held out a large manila envelope. Jessica Hayworth? Yes, that's me, she answered, her throat suddenly dry. This is your eviction notice. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. The words hit her like physical blows. 30 days. The paper in her hands might as well have weighed 1,000 pounds. Is there any way to arrange a payment? Plan? She asked, hating the desperation in her voice. That would be between you and the property owner, ma'am. Sterling Properties has been quite clear about their position on delinquent accounts. Sterling Properties. The name made Jessica's stomach churn. Connor had mentioned that name before, always with bitterness. His father's company. Thank you, she managed to say, closing the door before her legs gave out. She slid down against the door, clutching the envelope to her chest, struggling to breathe. 30 days to find a new place. 30 days to come up with first and last month's rent, a security deposit. Impossible. Mommy? Harper's small voice came from the kitchen doorway. Are you okay? Jessica quickly wiped her eyes and forced a smile. Yes, baby, everything's fine. Just some boring grown-up papers. But Harper's eyes lingered on her face, too perceptive for a 6-year-old. Zoe appeared behind her sister, both of them watching Jessica with innocent concern that broke her heart. All over again. Did we do something wrong? Zoe asked in a small voice. Jessica opened her arms, and the twins rushed into her embrace. No, my loves. You're perfect. Everything's perfect. She held them tightly, breathing in the scent of their hair, their innocence. I promise, she whispered. I'll figure something out. But as the girls returned to their breakfast, Jessica stared at the eviction notice, wondering if this was finally the promise she wouldn't be able to keep. Across town in a sleek glass skyscraper, Maxwell Sterling reviewed financial reports while sipping his third espresso of the morning. At 65, he commanded his real estate empire with calculated precision from his corner office, where floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city he helped shape. Your 9 o'clock canceled, Mr. Sterling, his assistant Rebecca announced, placing a folder on his immaculate desk. And here are this month's eviction reports for review. Maxwell barely looked up from his computer. Any unusual cases I should know about? Just standard delinquencies, all according to policy. He nodded curtly. For Maxwell, business was business. If tenants couldn't pay, they had to go. Simple mathematics. Proceed with all of them. We need to maintain standards. Rebecca hesitated. There's one property in Westbrook Heights. The tenant has twins. Children aren't exempt from contracts, Maxwell replied coldly. After Rebecca left, Maxwell studied the skyline he'd helped create. His success came from never allowing emotions to cloud business decisions. Sentiment was a luxury he'd abandoned. Long ago, especially after the bitter falling out with his son Connor. The memory of their last argument still haunted him. Connor, talented but idealistic, throwing away a promising business career to pursue music. Not everyone wants your empire, Dad, he'd shouted. Maxwell had cut him off financially, certain his son would return when reality hit. He never did. The buzzing intercom interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Sterling, there's something about one of the eviction cases you should see. Rebecca's voice sounded urgent. What now? The tenant in Westbrook Heights. Her name is Jessica Hayworth, but there's another name associated with the account. Connor Sterling. Maxwell's heart stopped. Connor? His son had been dead for 2 years. They hadn't spoken for 3 years before that. Bring me everything, he ordered, his voice suddenly hoarse. When Rebecca returned with the file, Maxwell stared at the photo of a young woman with 2 small girls. His coffee grew cold as he realized what this meant. Connor had children. He had grandchildren he never knew existed, and he was about to evict them. Without a word, Maxwell grabbed his keys and walked out, ignoring the meeting notifications on his calendar. In minutes, his luxury sedan was speeding toward Westbrook Heights, a neighborhood he'd only seen in property reports, never in person. The contrast between his gleaming office tower and the deteriorating apartment complex hit him physically. As he parked in front of the address, Maxwell questioned what he was doing. What would he say? What right did he have to insert himself into their lives? But then he remembered. They carried his name, his blood, and they were about to lose their home because of his company's decision. With uncharacteristic uncertainty, Maxwell Sterling approached the door, straightened his tie, and knocked. Jessica stared at her phone's blank screen, fighting the urge to throw it against the wall. Another rejection email from a job application, with the eviction notice still burning a hole in her kitchen counter. Desperation was setting in. Mommy, can we play outside? Zoe asked, tugging at Jessica's sleeve. Not right now, sweetie. Mommy needs to. A firm knock interrupted her. Jessica froze. The landlord again? A creditor? She wasn't ready for another confrontation. Stay here, she told the twins, smoothing her hair and taking a deep breath. When she opened the door, Jessica found herself face to face with a tall, imposing man in an expensive suit. His silver hair and sharp features exuded authority, but it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Connor's eyes looking back at her from an older face. Jessica Hayworth? His deep voice confirmed her suspicion. Maxwell Sterling, she replied. Not a question, but an accusation. He seemed surprised she recognized him. May I come in? Why? To see the place before we're thrown out? Jessica's voice was bitter, but she stepped aside. Maxwell entered, his gaze sweeping over the modest apartment with an unreadable expression. Before either could speak, two small figures appeared in the hallway. Who are you? Zoe asked boldly, while Harper hid partially behind her sister. Maxwell stared at the twins, his composed facade cracking. The girls had Connor's eyes, his dimples. He started, then faltered. Are you the man from Mommy's pictures? Harper asked quietly. Jessica stepped between them. Girls, please go to your room for a minute. But Mommy, Zoe protested. Now, please. Once they disappeared, Jessica turned to Maxwell. What do you want? The eviction notice was perfectly clear. Maxwell remained focused on the doorway where the twins had stood. They're Connor's daughters. Yes. Your grandchildren. The ones you never knew existed because you cut your son out of your life. Her words hit their mark. Maxwell's jaw tightened. I didn't know Connor had children. Would it have mattered? Jessica challenged. The silence between them was deafening. I came to tell you the eviction has been... Maxwell cleared his throat. That is, there's been a mistake. Jessica laughed humorlessly. No mistake, we can't pay, you're a businessman. It's just ironic that your company is evicting your own grandchildren. Maxwell studied her with newfound intensity. How did Connor die? The abrupt question caught Jessica off guard. Car accident, 2 years ago. Something flickered across his face, regret perhaps. I'd like to help, he said finally. We don't need your charity. It's not charity, it's... Maxwell struggled to find the right words. It's my responsibility. Jessica crossed her arms. Your responsibility ended when you turned your back on Connor. From the hallway came a small voice. Mommy, is that our grandpa? Both adults turned, to see Harper peering around the corner, eyes wide with curiosity. In that moment, the mighty Maxwell Sterling looked utterly lost for the first time in decades. The question hung in the air between them. Is that our grandpa? Jessica's instinct was to protect her daughters from this man who had caused Connor so much pain. But before she could answer, Zoe joined her sister in the hallway. You look like Daddy in the pictures, Zoe stated matter-of-factly, studying Maxwell's face with unnerving intensity. Maxwell seemed frozen, his usual commanding presence diminished by the innocent observation. Jessica watched emotions play across his face. Shock, recognition, and something she hadn't expected. Vulnerability. Girls, Jessica said gently, this is Mr. Sterling. He was your daddy's father. So he is our grandpa, Zoe exclaimed, her face lighting up with excitement. Harper remained partially hidden, watching Maxwell with cautious curiosity. Why haven't we met you before? The question pierced the room like an arrow. Maxwell looked to Jessica, clearly unprepared for the directness of a child's inquiry. Maxwell cleared his throat. I live very far away. That's not... Jessica began, then stopped herself. This wasn't the time for that conversation. Maxwell knelt down awkwardly, bringing himself to the twins' eye level, a gesture so unlike his boardroom demeanor that Jessica couldn't help but stare. I didn't know about you two, he said softly. Your daddy and we didn't talk for a long time. Harper stepped forward slightly. Did you have a fight? Maxwell nodded slowly. Yes, a very big one. Daddy said fighting is okay if you say sorry after, Zoe informed him solemnly. The simplicity of the child's wisdom seemed to cut through Maxwell's carefully constructed walls. For a moment, Jessica thought she saw moisture in his eyes before he blinked it away. That's very wise, he managed to say. Jessica placed her hands on the girl's shoulders. Why don't you two go play with your blocks? I need to talk to Mr. Sterling alone. Once the twins retreated to their room, Jessica turned to Maxwell, arms crossed defensively. Let's be clear. Whatever you're thinking of doing, whatever guilt has suddenly hit you after seeing them, it doesn't erase what happened with Connor. I understand that, Maxwell said quietly. Do you? Because Connor waited for years for some sign that you regretted what happened. He checked the mail every birthday, every Christmas, nothing. Maxwell's posture stiffened. Connor was the one who walked away. Because you gave him an impossible choice. Your way or nothing. Jessica's voice rose slightly before she controlled it, mindful of the girls. And now you show up because what? You've discovered you have adorable grandchildren? I came because I discovered my company was evicting my son's family, Maxwell corrected her. Whatever happened between Connor and me, I never knew about the twins. Had I known, the unfinished thought hung between them. What do you want, Mr. Sterling? Maxwell straightened his suit jacket, composing himself. I want to help. I can offer you a position at Sterling Properties. Administrative work. Jessica's surprise must have shown on her face. Not charity, he added quickly. Real work with fair compensation. Before Jessica could respond, Harper peeked around the corner again, her eyes meeting Maxwell's. Are you going to visit us again? She asked quietly. In that moment, Jessica saw something change in Maxwell Sterling's expression, the first genuine emotion she'd seen from him. Yes, he answered, if your mother allows it. Night had fallen by the time Jessica tucked the twins into bed. She kissed their foreheads, answered their endless questions about their newly discovered grandfather with careful half-truths, and promised tomorrow would be better. Will we see Grandpa again? Zoe asked, clutching her stuffed bear. Maybe, Jessica answered non-committally. Sleep tight, my loves. After closing their door, she collapsed onto the worn sofa, Maxwell's business card in her hand. The job offer replayed in her mind, along with his parting words. Think about it. For their sake, her pride screamed to tear up the card. Connor had suffered from his father's rejection, had built his life deliberately opposite to Maxwell's corporate world. Taking a job from the man who'd disowned her husband felt like betrayal. But the eviction notice on the counter told another story. 30 days. The twins deserve stability, security. Jessica's phone rang, displaying an unknown number. Hello? Ms. Hayworth, it's Maxwell Sterling. Jessica sat up straight. How did you get my number? I have resources. His tone was unapologetic. Have you considered my offer? It's been 6 hours, she replied tersely. In my experience, decisive people know their answer immediately. Jessica pinched the bridge of her nose. Your experience doesn't include single mothers facing eviction. Silence stretched between them before Maxwell spoke again, his voice softened slightly. Fair point. When can I expect your answer? I have questions first. This job, is it real or created for me? Will I report directly to you? What happens when the twins need me for school emergencies? The position is legitimate. You'd report to Daniel Forrester, our administrative manager. As for emergencies, Sterling Properties has family-friendly policies. Convenient, Jessica said dryly. Business evolves, even mine. Maxwell paused. I'd like to know more about them. The girls. Jessica tensed. Why? Because they're Connor's daughters. No, Jessica stood, pacing her small living room. You don't get to suddenly care about Connor's legacy now. Where were you when he needed a father? When he graduated? When he got married? When the twins were born? I made mistakes, Maxwell admitted, his voice uncharacteristically raw. Mistakes? Jessica laughed bitterly. You broke him. Do you know he kept your business card? For years, just in case you ever wanted to reconcile. The line went so quiet Jessica thought he'd hung up. I didn't know, Maxwell finally said. There's a lot you didn't know. Like how he worked 3 jobs to support us when the twins came. How he turned down a music opportunity because it meant leaving us for 6 months. That's what a father does. Jessica could hear Maxwell's measured breathing. The job offer stands, he said finally. But I understand if you decline. Jessica closed her eyes, weighing pride against practicality. The twins' faces floated in her mind, innocent, trusting her to protect them. I'll take the job, she said quietly. But understand, I'm doing it for them, not you, and it doesn't mean you get automatic access to their lives. I understand. Do you? Because I need to be clear. You hurt them, directly or indirectly, and you'll never see them again. The threat hung in the air, but Maxwell didn't challenge it. When can you start, he asked instead. Monday, and I'll need childcare assistance. Done. I'll have Rebecca arrange everything. After hanging up, Jessica stared at the phone, wondering if she'd just made a deal with the devil or found salvation for her family. In either case, there was no turning back now. The morning fog shrouded the cemetery in an ethereal haze as Maxwell Sterling stood before his son's grave. He'd avoided this place since the funeral 2 years ago, a somber affair where he'd stood at the back, separate from the grieving widow he hadn't known existed. Now, with flowers clutched awkwardly in his hand, Maxwell finally confronted the marble headstone bearing his son's name, Connor James Sterling, 1990-2023, beloved husband and father. The word struck Maxwell anew. Connor had been a father, something Maxwell had technically been but never truly embodied. I met your daughters yesterday. Maxwell spoke quietly to the grave. You should have told me. Only silence answered him. Birds sang distantly, oblivious to the weight of human grief. They have your eyes, he continued. The older one, Zoe, I think. She has your boldness. Harper's quieter, watches everything. Like your mother used to. Maxwell shifted uncomfortably, unaccustomed to speaking his thoughts aloud. I made Jessica an offer, a job at the company you rejected. He paused. Though perhaps rejected isn't fair. You chose a different path, and I couldn't understand it. Memories surfaced of their final argument. Connor, 25, passionate and defiant. I won't spend my life making money from other people's homes. There's more to living than profit margins, Dad. Maxwell's cold response. Then you'll do it without my support. I never called you, Maxwell admitted to the headstone. I was certain you'd come back when reality hit, when your music dreams failed. He placed the flowers against the grave, fingers lingering on the cold stone. Did they fail, Connor? Or did you find happiness? Despite me? His phone vibrated, Rebecca checking on his unexplained absence from morning meetings. Maxwell ignored it. Jessica says you kept my card. Were you waiting for me to make the first move? Or were you proving you could succeed without me? The silence of the cemetery pressed around him. No answers would come from this place. I don't know how to be a grandfather, Maxwell confessed quietly. I wasn't much of a father, but those girls. He swallowed hard. They didn't ask to be born into our broken legacy. A groundskeeper passed nearby, nodding respectfully before continuing his rounds. I'm offering Jessica a job, an apartment. She thinks it's guilt or obligation. Maybe it is. Maxwell straightened his tie. But maybe it's also the last chance. I have to get something right. The vibration of his phone became more insistent. Finally, Maxwell answered. Mr. Sterling, Jessica Hayworth called the office. Rebecca reported. She's asking about details for Monday. Maxwell looked once more at Connor's grave. Tell her I'll meet her personally to discuss arrangements. Sir, you never handle orientation. I do now, Maxwell replied, ending the call. As he walked back to his car, Maxwell felt something shift within him. Not healing, not yet, but perhaps the first acknowledgement that healing might be possible. Too late for his son, but perhaps not for his granddaughters. Too late to be the father Connor needed, but perhaps in time to become the grandfather Zoe and Harper deserved. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of nerves and determination for Jessica. She'd spent Sunday preparing, selecting her most professional outfit, a navy blouse and black pants, slightly worn but presentable, arranging emergency childcare with her neighbor Mrs. Peterson, and reviewing basic office skills on YouTube tutorials. "Do you have to go, Mommy?" Harper asked as Jessica braided her hair. "Yes, sweetheart. Mommy has a new job that will help us keep our home." "With Grandpa?" Zoe interjected, already dressed and bouncing on her toes. Jessica hesitated. "At his company, yes." "Will we see him today?" Harper's question was quieter, more tentative. "I don't know," Jessica answered honestly. "But I'll be home for dinner and you can tell me all about your day with Mrs. Peterson." After dropping the twins off next door, Jessica caught the bus downtown. The Sterling Properties building towered over the business district, 40 floors, of gleaming glass and steel. Her stomach tightened as she approached the entrance. The receptionist looked up with practiced politeness. "May I help you?" "Jessica Hayworth. I'm starting today in administration." Recognition flickered across the woman's face. "Yes, Ms. Hayworth. Mr. Sterling is expecting you, 15th floor." Mr. Sterling personally? Jessica had assumed she'd be processed by HR. The elevator ride felt interminable. When the doors opened, Rebecca, Maxwell's assistant whom she'd spoken with by phone, greeted her. "This way, please. Mr. Sterling wanted to introduce you to your department personally." Jessica followed her through an open office layout where employees glanced up curiously. Maxwell waited at a corner office, speaking to a man with glasses and a friendly face. "Ms. Hayworth." Maxwell nodded formally. "This is Daniel Forrester, administrative manager. You'll report directly to him." Daniel offered his hand with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, Jessica. Rebecca briefed me on your situation." Jessica tensed. "My situation?" "Single mother, new to corporate environment," Daniel clarified. "Nothing more." Maxwell cleared his throat. "Daniel will handle your orientation. If you need anything, Rebecca can reach me." "I'm sure I'll manage," Jessica replied coolly. As Maxwell turned to leave, she added, "Mr. Sterling, thank you for the opportunity. I won't waste it." Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile but a softening. "I know you won't." Once Maxwell departed, Daniel led Jessica to a modest workstation. "Let's get you settled. Nothing too challenging today. Just systems training and paperwork." By lunchtime, Jessica's head swam with passwords, protocols, and procedures. The corporate world was foreign territory after years of reception and service jobs. "How are you holding up?" Daniel asked, noticing her overwhelmed expression. "It's a lot," Jessica admitted. "Everyone feels that way their first day." "You're doing fine." As Jessica unwrapped her simple sandwich in the break room, she noticed other employees watching her curiously. "You arrived with Maxwell Sterling himself," a woman explained, sitting nearby. "That never happens." "I'm nothing special," Jessica demurred. "If the boss personally escorted you, you're something," the woman countered. "I'm Alicia, by the way." Jessica hesitated, then decided simple honesty was best. "He knew my late husband." "Ah," Alicia nodded, accepting the explanation without pressing. "By day's end?" Jessica's feet ached and her mind raced with new information. As she gathered her things, Daniel approached. "You did well today. See you tomorrow?" Jessica nodded, relieved. "I'll be here." Outside, she was surprised to find Maxwell, waiting beside a black sedan. "I thought you might appreciate a ride home. First day can be exhausting." Jessica wanted to refuse, but practicality won out. "Thank you." As they drove, Maxwell asked, "How was it?" "Different. Challenging." Jessica watched the city pass by. "But I'll learn." Maxwell nodded, his eyes on the road. "Daniel says you're quick to catch on." "He's kind." They fell into silence until Maxwell spoke again. "The twins. Are they?" "Well," Jessica studied his profile, searching for insincerity but finding none. "They're curious about you," she admitted. They've never had a grandfather before. Something in Maxwell's posture changed, a barely perceptible straightening. I've never been one before, he replied quietly. It wasn't an apology nor a promise. But as they approached Jessica's apartment building, she recognized it for what it was. A beginning. The next few weeks blurred together for Jessica. Each morning began with the military precision of getting two 6-year-olds fed, dressed, and delivered to Mrs. Peterson before catching the 7:15 bus downtown. The Sterling Properties building, once intimidating, gradually became familiar territory. Daniel proved to be the patient mentor Jessica needed, guiding her through the labyrinth of corporate procedures without condescension. "You're catching on faster than most," he remarked one afternoon as Jessica successfully processed a complex batch of property records. "Necessity is a powerful motivator," she replied with a small smile. Her co-workers, initially curious about her connection to Maxwell Sterling, eventually accepted her as part of the team. Only Alicia occasionally probed for details during lunch breaks. "So did you meet him through your husband?" she asked one day. Jessica carefully constructed her answer. "My husband knew him years ago. We reconnected recently." That much was true, if incomplete. Maxwell himself maintained a professional distance at the office. Their interactions were limited to occasional nods in the hallway or brief exchanges about her progress. Yet every evening, his black sedan appeared outside the building for her commute home. These rides were initially filled with awkward silence, but gradually evolved into practical discussions: her job performance, the twins' needs, bus schedules. Maxwell never mentioned Connor directly, but his presence haunted every conversation. "Harper asked about you yesterday," Jessica volunteered one evening as they approached her apartment. Maxwell's hands tightened imperceptibly on the steering wheel. "What did she ask?" "If you liked music like her daddy did." The car slowed slightly. "What did you tell her?" "That I didn't know." Jessica glanced at his profile. "Do you? Like music?" Maxwell was quiet for a moment. "Connor got that from his mother. I've always been indifferent." "He would play for the girls before they were even born," Jessica said, surprising herself by sharing the memory. "Said they danced in my belly when he played guitar." Maxwell cleared his throat. "They seem to be adjusting well to your new schedule?" The subject change was obvious, but Jessica allowed it. "Mostly. There was a meltdown yesterday when I missed bedtime stories. Mrs. Peterson is kind, but she's not me." "Perhaps a more suitable arrangement could be made," Maxwell suggested. "A nanny, with proper qualifications." "We're managing," Jessica said firmly. "I don't need your charity beyond the job." Maxwell frowned slightly. "It isn't charity to ensure your children, my grandchildren, receive proper care." "They're receiving proper care." Jessica's tone hardened. "I've been doing this alone since Connor died. Since before, really." The implication hung between them. Connor had been alone because of Maxwell. As they pulled up to her building, Maxwell said, "There's another matter we should discuss. Your lease." Jessica tensed. "We have 3 weeks before eviction." "I've been reviewing your housing situation," Maxwell continued, his business-like tone returning. "This building isn't appropriate. The security is inadequate, the maintenance substandard." "It's what we can afford," Jessica replied defensively. "I have a property in Ridgewood Heights. 2-bedroom apartment, secure building, good school district. It's currently vacant." Jessica stared at him. "Ridgewood Heights? I couldn't possibly afford." "The rent would be proportionate to your salary," Maxwell interrupted. "A business arrangement, not charity." "Why are you doing this?" Jessica asked directly. For once, Maxwell seemed caught off guard. He looked away before answering. "Because they deserve better, and so do you." Before Jessica could respond, Maxwell continued, "Think about it. There's no rush to decide." As Jessica exited the car, she turned back. "The girls have a school presentation, Friday morning. They've been practicing for weeks." She hesitated. "They'd probably be happy if you came." Something flickered across Maxwell's face. Surprise, perhaps even gratitude. "Text me the details," he said simply. Jessica nodded and closed the door, watching the black sedan disappear around the corner. With each passing day, the lines she'd drawn between them blurred a little more. She wasn't ready to forgive Maxwell. Sterling, but for her daughter's sake, she was beginning to wonder if she could learn to accept him. Friday morning arrived with the perfect storm of chaos. Zoe woke with a low-grade fever, Harper spilled juice on her presentation outfit, and Jessica's alarm failed to go off. By the time they rushed into the elementary school auditorium, Jessica's nerves were frayed to breaking point. "We're not late, are we?" she whispered to Mrs. Peterson, who had kindly driven them. "Just in time," the elderly woman assured her. "The kindergarteners go last." Jessica scanned the crowded room, surprised to feel disappointment when she didn't see Maxwell. She hadn't really expected him to come, had she? "Jessica." The deep voice behind her made her jump. Maxwell stood there, looking uncomfortably out of place among the casual parents in his tailored suit. He held a small bouquet of daisies in one hand. "You came," Jessica said, unable to hide her surprise. "You invited me." His tone suggested it was that simple. Before she could respond, the music started. They took seats near the back, Maxwell sitting, stiffly as if the plastic chair might contaminate his expensive suit. The kindergarten class filed onto the small stage, the children squinting under the lights as they searched for familiar faces. Harper spotted them first, nudging Zoe, whose flushed face brightened momentarily. "The one on the left is sick," Jessica murmured. "Zoe." She insisted on coming anyway. Maxwell's gaze focused intently on the twins. "They're stubborn. Like Connor." It was the first time he'd mentioned his son voluntarily, and Jessica felt the weight of the moment. The children performed their song about seasons, Zoe visibly wilting by the end. As the audience applauded, Jessica was already on her feet. "I need to take her home. She shouldn't be at school today." Maxwell stood immediately. "My car is closer than the bus." For once, Jessica didn't argue. 20 minutes later, they were at Jessica's apartment. Zoe curled up on the sofa with a children's show playing quietly. Maxwell stood awkwardly in the small living room while Jessica took Harper to change clothes. "Will you stay with us, Grandpa?" Harper asked, looking up at Maxwell with Connor's eyes. Maxwell glanced at Jessica, silently asking permission. "Mr. Sterling has work," Jessica began. "Actually," Maxwell interrupted, checking his watch, "I cleared my morning schedule." Jessica raised an eyebrow but didn't object. While she settled Zoe with medicine and juice, Maxwell sat tentatively beside Harper, who had pulled out a coloring book. "Do you like to color, Grandpa?" Harper asked, offering him a crayon. "I haven't colored in a very long time," he admitted. "You stay in the lines better than Mommy," Harper observed seriously, as Maxwell carefully colored a dinosaur. From the kitchen doorway, Jessica watched the unlikely scene unfold. The mighty Maxwell Sterling, terror of the real estate world, coloring with painstaking precision while her daughter chattered away. There was something almost vulnerable in his concentration. When her phone rang, Jessica stepped into the kitchen to answer it. Daniel's voice sounded concerned. "Jessica, is everything okay?" Mr. Sterling canceled all his meetings without explanation. "Zoe's sick. He drove us home from the school presentation." A pause. "I see. Should I reschedule his afternoon appointments too?" Jessica glanced into the living room where Maxwell was now reading a story to both twins, Zoe having migrated to the couch beside him. "Let me ask him," she said, but as she approached, the scene before her made her hesitate. Harper was demonstrating how to make different voices for characters. Zoe, despite her fever, was giggling at Maxwell's awkward attempts, and Maxwell, his usual stern expression had softened into something Jessica had never seen before. "I'll have him call you back," Jessica told Daniel, ending the call. Some barriers, she was beginning to realize, were perhaps meant to come down, after all. Jessica stood in the empty apartment, sunlight streaming through spotless windows. The space was modest by any normal standard. 2 bedrooms, a combined living and dining area, a kitchen with actual counter space. But compared to their current home, it felt palatial. "This is really within my budget?" she asked, running her hand along the smooth kitchen counter. Maxwell nodded, standing near the entrance with his hands clasped behind his back. The rent will be proportionate to your salary. I've had the paperwork prepared. He gestured to a folder on the counter. Jessica flipped through the documents, searching for the catch, the fine print that would reveal this as another power play. Instead, she found a straightforward lease at a rate she could manage, even with her new salary. Why? She asked, looking up at him. Maxwell's expression remained neutral. Because living conditions affect performance, it's a business decision. Is that really all it is? For a moment, something flickered in his eyes, discomfort at being challenged, perhaps. The twins deserve better than that apartment building. Jessica closed the folder. And if I were to miss a payment, would you evict us as efficiently as your company tried to before? Maxwell met her gaze directly. You won't miss payments. It wasn't an answer, but the confidence in his voice, not in his company's policies, but in her, caught Jessica off guard. Before she could respond, her phone chimed with a text from Mrs. Peterson. Girls asking when you'll be home. Zoe feeling better? I should go, Jessica said, tucking the folder into her bag. I'll review this tonight. Take your time, Maxwell replied, though they both knew she had already decided. The following weekend brought moving day, a modest affair with few possessions to transport. Daniel had organized a company van and recruited 2 maintenance workers to help. Maxwell himself appeared mid-morning, observing rather than participating. Grandpa. Zoe spotted him first, running across the parking lot. Harper followed more cautiously behind. Maxwell stiffened momentarily before kneeling to their level. Hello, girls. Are you excited about your new home? Will our room have pink walls? Zoe asked hopefully. The walls are white, Maxwell answered. But perhaps we can add color with artwork and curtains, Jessica interrupted, approaching with a box in her arms. Mr. Sterling isn't responsible for decorating. Actually, Maxwell cleared his throat. I took the liberty of having some basic furnishings delivered. The girls' room has beds. He hesitated. And there may be some decorative items. Jessica raised an eyebrow. Decorative items? Nothing excessive, he assured her quickly. When they arrived at the new apartment, Jessica discovered Maxwell's definition of basic furnishings included complete bedroom sets for the twins, a sofa, dining table, kitchen essentials, and a desk for her work. In the twins' room, butterfly decals adorned one wall while stars and moons covered another. Maxwell, Jessica began, unsure whether to be grateful or irritated. It's not charity, he said before she could continue. Consider it an advance on future performance bonuses. The twins' squeals of delight as they discovered their new space made argument impossible. Harper ran her hand over the soft purple comforter on her bed, while Zoe bounced experimentally on hers. Our own beds, Harper marveled. No more sharing. Jessica felt a lump in her throat. Their excitement over something so basic, something most children took for granted, highlighted just how much they'd gone without. Maxwell stood in the doorway, watching their reactions with an expression Jessica couldn't quite decipher. When Harper ran over to hug his legs, he froze momentarily before awkwardly patting her head. Thank you, Grandpa, Harper said solemnly. Yes. Well? Maxwell adjusted his tie. Every child needs a proper bed. That evening, after the twins were asleep in their new rooms, Jessica sat on the balcony, paperwork spread before her in the warm evening air. The lease, employment contract, and various forms created a paper trail of her growing connection to Maxwell Sterling. 6 weeks ago, he'd been just a name, Connor's estranged father, a corporate villain. Now he was their landlord, her boss, indirectly, and the grandfather her daughters were quickly growing attached to. Jessica signed the final document, her pen hesitating only briefly. Whatever Maxwell's true motivations, guilt, obligation, or perhaps something more genuine, she could no longer deny that her daughters' lives were better with him in it. For their sake, she was learning to live with the contradiction of the
man himself. 3 months into her position at Sterling Properties, Jessica found herself staying late to complete a property management report. The office had emptied hours ago, leaving only the cleaning staff and a few dedicated workers scattered.
Across the floor. You're still here? Daniel's voice broke her concentration. Jessica looked up from her computer, surprised to see her supervisor standing by her desk with his coat already on. Just finishing the West Side portfolio analysis, I noticed some discrepancies in the occupancy rates. Daniel leaned over to examine her work, eyebrows rising as he scrolled through her spreadsheet. You caught this pattern across all the properties? It seemed odd that vacancy rates spiked in the same month across different neighborhoods, Jessica explained. So I cross-referenced with maintenance requests. Turns out there were plumbing issues reported in all of them before tenants started leaving. This is impressive work, Jessica, Daniel said, genuinely surprised. Most new hires wouldn't notice something like this, much less investigate it. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I just thought about it from a tenant's perspective. When our old apartment had plumbing problems, everyone in the building complained. That's exactly the perspective we need, Daniel smiled. You have a natural talent for this, you know. Jessica saved her work, trying to hide how much his words affected her. For years, she'd viewed herself as simply surviving, a widow struggling to provide for her children. The idea that she might actually be good at something, that she had professional value beyond a paycheck, felt foreign but exhilarating. I should get home to the girls, she said, gathering her things. Maxwell left. An hour ago, Daniel mentioned. Do you need a ride? I'll catch the bus, it's not far from the new place. The new apartment had transformed their lives in ways Jessica hadn't anticipated. The twins thrived in their safe environment, making friends with neighboring children and enjoying the small playground in the building's courtyard. Their nightmares, once frequent after Connor's death, had virtually disappeared. Jessica arrived home to find Mrs. Peterson reading to the girls in their bedroom. They've been angels, the older woman reported. Even finished all their homework before TV time. After Mrs. Peterson left, Jessica tucked the twins into their beds, still a novelty having separate ones, and listened to their excited chatter about their day. Tommy from 4B showed us how to make paper airplanes, Zoe announced. And I made mine fly all the way across the playground, Harper added. That's wonderful, Jessica smiled, kissing their foreheads. Sweet dreams, my loves. Later, as she prepared for bed herself, Jessica's phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. Daniel mentioned your analysis of the West Side properties. Would you present your findings at tomorrow's management meeting? MS, Jessica stared at the message. Maxwell had never texted her directly before, and presenting at a management meeting was well above her current position. After a moment's hesitation, she replied simply, yes. The next morning, Jessica arrived early to prepare, nerves building as executives began filing into the conference room. Maxwell entered last, nodding briefly in her direction before taking his seat at the head of the table. Before we begin, regular business, he announced. Jessica Hayworth has identified a pattern affecting multiple properties that warrants our attention. All eyes turned to her, and for a brief moment Jessica felt paralyzed. Then she remembered the countless times she'd faced worse challenges, giving birth to twins, losing Connor, facing eviction. This was just a meeting. She began speaking, her voice growing more confident as she presented her findings. The executives listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that she answered with growing assurance. When she finished, Maxwell nodded almost imperceptibly. Thank you, Ms. Hayworth. Daniel, coordinate with maintenance to address these issues immediately. It wasn't effusive praise, but from Maxwell Sterling, it might as well have been a standing ovation. As the meeting adjourned, Jessica gathered her materials, surprised when Maxwell approached her directly. Good work, he said simply. You have an instinct for this business. Coming from him, the words carried unexpected weight. Jessica realized that for the first time since Connor's death, she wasn't just surviving, she was beginning to thrive. Mommy, can Grandpa come to our birthday party? Zoe's question caught Jessica off guard as she braided her daughter's hair on Saturday morning. Birthday party? Your birthday isn't for 2 more months, Jessica replied, buying time. Harper looked up from her drawing at the kitchen table. But we need to plan it now. Ms. Wilson says proper parties need planning. Jessica smiled at her daughter's serious expression. Ms. Wilson, their first-grade teacher, was big on planning and preparation. Well, we'll have to see. Grandpa's very busy with work, Jessica hedged. But he's the boss, Zoe reasoned. Can't he tell people he has important grandpa business? Jessica chuckled despite herself. The twins had become increasingly attached to Maxwell over the past months. What had begun as occasional encounters had evolved into semi-regular weekend visits. Maxwell had even attended a school function last month, sitting uncomfortably among the other parents but visibly proud when Harper received a reading award. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Would Saturday lunch be convenient? There's a matter I'd like to discuss. MS, even his text messages were formal. Jessica texted back. The girls are free. Noon? The response came quickly. I'll pick you up at 12. When Jessica told the twins, they erupted in excitement, rushing to choose their outfits while debating what restaurants might have the best desserts. Precisely at noon, Maxwell's car pulled up outside their building. The twins raced down to meet him, with Jessica following behind. Good afternoon, Maxwell greeted them, opening the car doors. He was dressed more casually than usual, a button-down shirt without a tie and dark slacks instead of a full suit. Where are we going, Grandpa? Harper asked as they settled in. I thought we might try Harrison's. They have a garden area. Maxwell replied, glancing at Jessica for approval. She nodded, surprised by his consideration. Harrison's was upscale but family-friendly, a perfect middle ground between Maxwell's usual haunts and the cheerful chain restaurants the girls preferred. At the restaurant, they were seated in a pleasant courtyard beneath flowering trellises. While the twins exclaimed over the menu's illustrations, Maxwell cleared his throat. There's something I wanted to discuss, he began, directing his words to Jessica, but including the girls with his gaze. Jessica tensed slightly. What is it? I've purchased a lake house about an hour outside the city, Maxwell stated. Nothing extravagant, but it has a dock and a small beach area. I thought perhaps you and the girls might like to spend a weekend there. The summer heat in the city can be oppressive. Jessica blinked in surprise. This wasn't about work or financial arrangements. This was purely personal. A social invitation, a step beyond their careful detente. A beach? Zoe's eyes widened. With swimming? A shallow area, yes, Maxwell nodded. And there are kayaks. Harper looked thoughtful. Can we stay overnight, like camping? There are proper beds, Maxwell assured her. 3 bedrooms, actually. Jessica studied him carefully. When did you buy this lake house? Maxwell met her gaze directly. 2 weeks ago. The implication was clear. He had purchased it with them in mind. Jessica felt the familiar resistance rising within her. This man had hurt Connor deeply, had been absent when they needed family most. Yet as she watched him patiently answer the twins' excited questions, showing them photos of the property on his phone, Jessica saw something she couldn't ignore. Maxwell was trying, genuinely trying, to build a relationship with his grandchildren. And perhaps by extension with her. We'd need to check our calendar, Jessica said finally. The girls have swimming lessons on Saturdays. Maxwell nodded, understanding her unspoken message. Not a rejection, but not immediate acceptance either. Of course, the invitation stands whenever you're available. As lunch progressed, Jessica found herself watching Maxwell interact with the twins. His initial stiffness had evolved into something more natural over time. He still wasn't demonstrative, no spontaneous hugs or effusive praise, but there was genuine interest when he listened to their stories. Real concern when Harper mentioned a playground bully. Maybe next weekend, Jessica found herself saying, as they finished dessert. If the offer still stands. The smile that briefly crossed Maxwell's face contained something she'd never seen before. Hope. It does, he replied simply. The lake house stood on a gentle slope overlooking clear blue waters, its weathered cedar exterior blending harmoniously with the surrounding pines. It was smaller than Jessica had expected, not the ostentatious mansion she'd imagined Maxwell would choose, but a comfortable retreat with a wide porch and large windows to capture the view. "It's beautiful," Zoe exclaimed, bouncing in her car seat as Maxwell pulled into the gravel driveway. The twins burst from the car the moment it stopped, racing toward the wooden dock that extended into the lake. Jessica called after them, "Stay, where I can see you." "They'll be fine," Maxwell said, retrieving bags from the trunk. "The property is fenced and the water is shallow near the shore." Jessica nodded, though her maternal instinct remained on high alert. "This place isn't what I expected." "What did you expect?" Maxwell asked, handing her a tote bag. "Something showier. More Maxwell Sterling." He almost smiled. "Connor used to say I had no appreciation for understated quality." The mention of Connor, offered voluntarily, without tension, caught Jessica by surprise. Throughout their complicated relationship, Maxwell had carefully avoided discussing his son. Inside, the house was comfortably furnished with overstuffed couches and rustic wooden tables. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, while the opposite side featured windows overlooking the lake where the twins were now skipping stones. The previous owners were retiring to Arizona, Maxwell explained, setting down their bags. They'd maintained it well. It needed very little renovation. Jessica wandered to the windows watching her daughters. "Why did you really buy this place, Maxwell?" He paused, considering his answer. "I never took Connor to places like this. His mother wanted to, but I was always too busy with work. There was always another deal, another acquisition." Maxwell stood beside her at the window. "I thought perhaps I could do better this time." The honesty in his voice settled something in Jessica's chest, a question she'd been holding since he first appeared at their door months ago. The weekend unfolded with surprising ease. Maxwell had prepared for their visit meticulously. Child-sized, life vests hung in the boathouse. The refrigerator was stocked with family-friendly foods, and a collection of board games filled a cabinet in the living room. By Saturday evening, after a day of swimming and exploring, the twins were exhausted. Jessica tucked them into their beds in the cheerful room Maxwell had apparently designated as theirs, complete with nautical-themed bedspreads. "Best day ever," Zoe mumbled sleepily. "Grandpa showed me a turtle," Harper added, already half asleep. When Jessica returned to the living room, she found Maxwell on the porch nursing a glass of whiskey as he gazed at the moonlight reflecting off the lake. She joined him, accepting the glass of wine he offered from a side table. "They're happy," she said simply. Maxwell nodded. "They're remarkable children." "Connor would have loved this place," Jessica said softly. "He always talked about teaching the girls to fish someday." Maxwell's hand tightened slightly around his. "Glass. He fished with my father once. Just once before my father passed. He was 10. Caught nothing but talked about it for weeks." Jessica studied his profile in the dim porch light. "You never talk about him?" "No," Maxwell agreed. After a long pause, he added, "It's difficult. Because you regret how things ended?" "Because I was wrong." The admission seemed to physically pain him. "Connor chose his own path. I should have respected that." Jessica sipped her wine, surprised by his candor. "Why didn't you?" Maxwell stared into his whiskey. "Pride. Stubbornness. Fear, perhaps." "Fear? What did you have to fear?" "That he was right." Maxwell's voice lowered. "That there was more to life than what I had built. That I had missed something essential that he had somehow found." The vulnerability in his confession stunned Jessica. This was a side of Maxwell Sterling she had never imagined existed, capable of self-doubt, of recognizing his own failings. "After he died," Jessica said carefully, "I found a letter he'd started writing to you. He never sent it." Maxwell's head turned sharply. A letter? Jessica nodded. He wanted to rebuild your relationship, not for himself, but for the girls. He thought they deserved to know their grandfather. Maxwell set down his glass, his hands visibly unsteady. I never knew. The accident happened before he finished it. Jessica looked out at the lake, remembering. He always hoped you'd reach out first, but he was finally ready to make the first move. Silence settled between them, heavy with shared grief and missed opportunities. What would he think, Maxwell finally asked, about this? About my presence in your lives now? Jessica considered the question honestly. I think he'd be cautiously hopeful. Connor never stopped loving you, even when he was angriest with you. Maxwell absorbed this, his usual composed facade cracking just enough to reveal genuine emotion. Thank you for allowing me into their lives, Jessica. I know it hasn't been easy for you. It hasn't, she agreed. But seeing how they light up around you, Connor would have wanted that. As night deepened around the lake house, something shifted between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. The shared love of a man they had both lost differently, and the shared love of the two little girls sleeping inside who carried his legacy. Hold the handlebars steady, Harper. Maxwell called, jogging alongside the wobbling bicycle. His usually immaculate appearance was transformed. Sleeves rolled up, a light sheen of sweat on his forehead, and uncharacteristic excitement in his voice. Jessica watched from the apartment, complex's courtyard bench, still processing the scene before her. Maxwell Sterling, feared real estate mogul, teaching her daughter to ride a bike on a Sunday afternoon. It wasn't just the activity that surprised her, but the two brand new bicycles. He'd arrived with an hour earlier. Look, Mommy, I'm doing it, Harper called triumphantly as she pedaled a few feet unassisted before Maxwell caught her. You're a natural, he encouraged, his hand hovering near her back. Zoe bounced impatiently nearby. My turn next, Grandpa. These bikes must have been expensive, Jessica said when Maxwell approached during a water break. He shrugged. Every child should have a bicycle. It was becoming his refrain. Every child should have proper beds. Every child should have winter boots. Every child should have art supplies. Each statement a subtle acknowledgement of what his own son might have lacked. Not materially, but in attention and support. You don't need to buy their affection, Jessica said gently. Maxwell looked startled. I'm not trying to. I know, she interrupted, but you already have it. Just being here means everything to them. He considered this, watching. Zoe practiced balancing. I missed so much with Connor, he said quietly. First steps, first words, all delegated to nannies while I built my empire. You're here now, Jessica said simply. Their relationship had evolved significantly since the lake house weekend 2 months ago. Maxwell now regularly spent Sunday afternoons with them, and the twins had visited his office several times after school. To Jessica's surprise, even her co-workers had adapted to seeing Maxwell Sterling with 2 small girls trailing behind him through the corporate corridors. Daniel mentioned you're being considered for the assistant property manager position, Maxwell said, changing the subject. Jessica nodded. He brought it up last week. It would mean more responsibility, better pay. You've earned it. Your performance evaluations are exemplary. It's not because of. Jessica hesitated. Our connection? Maxwell raised an eyebrow. Quite the contrary. I specifically instructed Daniel to treat you as any other employee. Your advancement is based solely on merit. Before Jessica could respond, Zoe called out, Grandpa, watch me. Maxwell immediately returned to his granddaughter, leaving Jessica to reflect on how much had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been facing eviction, struggling to feed her children. Now she had stable housing, a promising career, and, most surprisingly, family support. That evening, after Maxwell had left and the twins were asleep with visions of bicycle adventures dancing in their heads, Jessica found herself looking through old photos of Connor. His smile, so similar to Harper's, beamed back at her from their wedding day. You should see your dad, she whispered to the photograph. He's trying so hard. Her phone chimed with a text from Maxwell. The girls did well today. Harper has natural. Balance. Zoe has determination. Thank you for the afternoon. The formality of his messages had softened over time, but still carried his distinct personality. Jessica replied, They're already planning next Sunday's adventure. You've created monsters. His response came quickly. I look forward to it. Jessica set down her phone, a realization washing over her. Somewhere between reluctant acceptance and cautious cooperation, she had begun to genuinely appreciate Maxwell's presence in their lives. Not just for what he provided materially, but for who he was becoming. A grandfather who showed up, who tried, who cared. Connor would never witness this transformation, but his daughters would benefit from it. And perhaps that was its own form of healing, not erasing the past, but building something new from its foundations. A year to the day after the eviction notice changed their lives, Jessica stood in the kitchen of their apartment, putting final touches on a birthday cake. The twins would be turning 7 tomorrow, and their excitement had been building for weeks. Do you think Grandpa will like our party? Harper asked, carefully arranging plastic forks on the table. I'm sure he will, Jessica assured her, though. She still found it amusing to imagine Maxwell Sterling surrounded by squealing second graders. Maxwell had become a fixture in their lives, consistent, reliable, and increasingly comfortable in his role as grandfather. The transformation from corporate tyrant to family man wasn't complete. He still maintained his business persona at work, but the walls between those worlds had thinned considerably. The doorbell rang, and Zoe raced to answer it. Grandpa's here. Maxwell entered carrying a large wrapped box and a smaller package. Happy early birthday, he said as the twins circled him excitedly. What did you bring us? Zoe asked, eyeing the presents. You'll have to wait until tomorrow to find out, Maxwell replied, setting them aside. Jessica noticed something different about him today, a nervous energy beneath his usual composure. Everything okay? She asked quietly while the girls returned to their decorating. Yes, just. He cleared his throat. I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow's festivities. They stepped onto the small balcony, leaving the door ajar to hear the twins. What's on your mind? Jessica asked. Maxwell gazed across the city skyline. I've been thinking about Connor a great deal lately. Birthdays were significant to him. He loved celebrations, Jessica agreed, remembering Connor's enthusiasm for even the smallest occasions. I have something for the girls. Maxwell's voice grew quiet. I'm not certain if it's appropriate. Jessica had never seen him seek approval this way. What is it? Connor's guitar. I found it among some things in storage. I had it restored. Jessica felt her breath catch. That's what's in the big box? Maxwell nodded. I thought perhaps they might want to learn. Connor would have taught them. The thoughtfulness of the gesture, connecting the twins to their father's passion, moved Jessica deeply. They'll treasure it, Maxwell. Truly. He seemed relieved. There's something else. He handed her the smaller package. This is for you. Curious, Jessica unwrapped it to find a framed photograph she'd never seen before. Connor as a teenager, playing guitar on what looked like the lake house dock, his face young and carefree. I didn't know you had this, she whispered. It was taken the last summer we spent together as a family before. Maxwell didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Before the arguments, before the estrangement. Thank you, Jessica said simply, touched by the gift and what it represented. Maxwell nodded, then added, I've established trust funds for the girls' education. Nothing extravagant, but enough to ensure they have options when the time comes. Year ago, Jessica would have refused such assistance. Now she understood it for what it was, not control or obligation, but love. Connor would be grateful, she said, and so am I. From inside came shrieks of laughter as the twins chased each other around the living room. The sound drew a small smile from Maxwell, a genuine expression that had become less rare over the months. I never imagined this, he admitted quietly. A second chance at family. Jessica touched his arm lightly. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come from our deepest wounds. As they rejoined the twins inside, Jessica watched Maxwell kneel down to help Harper with a particularly challenging balloon. In that moment, she realized they had all come full circle, from strangers bound by loss to a family connected by love. The man who had once been merely Connor's estranged father, then an unwelcome intruder, had become something unexpected, a pillar of support, a trusted friend, a beloved grandfather. Some journeys begin with an ending. Theirs had started with an eviction notice and a confrontation, but where it led, to healing, to connection, to belonging, was something none of them could have foreseen that desperate morning a year ago. And as Maxwell helped Zoe hang streamers from the ceiling, his expensive suit forgotten in favor of family chaos, Jessica knew that Connor would be smiling down on them all,